Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Shawn Lemon. He is the founder of the Digital Organizer and has spent the last 17 years helping individuals and businesses get better at using their technology. Welcome to the show, Shawn.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Sean. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about how one can master their digital workplace. So we'll talk about all this, but let's first understand about your journey, about your background, so that people know better, who they are listening to.
Yeah. So I started all of this through working at the Apple Store. I helped people to learn how to use Apple technology. And a lot of people were buying brand new Macs and they were coming from a PC, sometimes from an older Mac, and they would transfer all of their data from their old computer to the new one. And they were so excited to have a fresh start on this new computer. And then they open it up and they see everything that was on their old machine is just dumped on the new one and it's all disorganized, and now the photos that were in folders are now in this new app and they can't wrap their head around it. And people who had a big disorganized mess of files had a hard time learning or really accomplishing anything in the midst of the mess, and a lot of people really needed help and no one was doing it. And so eventually, after doing it on the side at the Apple Store for about 6 years while I was working there, I started this, and that was 10 years ago, actually almost 11 now, that I went full time and have just been doing the digital organization for clients, both individuals and businesses, now mostly businesses.
Now mostly businesses. So help us understand a bit about some of the crazy things you have seen, either for individuals or
Sure.
for businesses, how they have, kept all their files and
Yeah.
everything that is digitally into their system.
Yeah, well, I mean, the probably the craziest inbox that I ever saw was 300,000 in the inbox. About 12 years ago, I saw someone who had 1 million emails in their account total, and and I kept working with him for a long time. I never got a final count of what he was up to before he changed jobs and got out of that whole situation. But yeah, that was a big one. Another big one is we worked with this company based out of New Zealand that they're an education-based company, and they worked with contractors all over the world. And they had bootstrapped using a Gmail account. So this was before Google. They had gotten a Google Workspace set up. I don't think it was before Google Workspace existed, but they were bootstrapping, getting started. And they had people contributing to their file system from all around the world. Like I said, we stopped counting at 100 contributors. And what that meant is out of tens of thousands of files that existed in this company's folder structure, they only owned a small percentage of them because they had invited all of these contractors to use their own personal email accounts to contribute to their folder structure. And so things would just disappear because that contractor would delete their account and it deleted all the files. Or they're cleaning out their account thinking that they delivered it to my client. Meanwhile, this is a shared drive. So when we use things like consumer-based products like a gmail.com account rather than Google Workspace, we open ourselves up to vulnerability of file ownership and things just going missing because we truly don't own them. And this is the reason why we really push business subscriptions. And while nobody likes paying for a subscription, they're absolutely worth it. Stuff like that. Ooh, I got passwords, stories, all kinds of stuff if you want me to go into them.
Right, right, Sean. So I want to understand. You gave some examples, the
Yeah.
situation. So why is it so? You talk about that this is because of a lack of understanding of the tools, and
Right.
which isn't surprising because they
Right.
are constantly changing as
Hmm.
technology advances. So advances should be welcome. It should make our life easier, but it should not be make our life the way you describe for those individuals as well as businesses.
Right. Yeah. And the fact is, the majority of the tools that we use are are about 80% the same as all the others. Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, SharePoint, Box, you name the cloud service, and 80% of its functionality is exactly the same. They differentiate themselves with this specific feature or another one, and marketers have done a phenomenal job highlighting those differences and making all kinds of promises of how that technology can change your life. And it really can, if you spend the time to think about, how should I use this tool? How am I going to implement it in my life or in my business? And let me consolidate, take all the time to consolidate all of the information from multiple sources to fully commit to this new system that I'm using. That's the missing component, is learning how this tool works, how you're going to implement it, and then finishing the process by consolidating everything together and getting it organized so that you can be successful using that tool.
Right, right. And you talk about finding anything in seconds. Who doesn't want to do that? What is the best way? Let's find some solutions, learn from solutions from
Yeah.
you, Shawn.
Yeah. So when it comes to files, the majority of the problem is that our files are spread out in many different locations. So because we have a limited amount of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a resource guide so you can follow along. I'm going to hit this at a high level. And if you find this interesting, I want you to go to thedigitalorganizer.com/KAJ, and you can download my files organization guide. But I'm going to hit it at a high level now. And that's number one, consolidate everything together. So if you've decided you want to go fully Google Drive, we need to download our files from iCloud, Dropbox, Box, all of the different places, and we need to get it all into Dropbox. Once we have it there, then we start organizing. We trash the stuff we don't need. We archive the stuff that isn't relevant to our lives or businesses anymore, but we don't want to delete them. And then we're left over with the files that we actually use and will reference in the future. And that's what we organize and create a new folder structure around how we do business today and what's relevant in our personal lives. And then you've got one place to store things. Then secondly, after you've done that process, or maybe even before, you could change some preferences in your web browser. And this is a very simple change that if you go into Chrome settings or Safari, whatever you're using, you can say, find the download section and tell it, instead of downloading to the downloads folder, ask me where you should download this file. This way we can rename it and we can put it in the right place the first time. Because I don't know about you, the majority of the people that I interact with are not good with just doing routine maintenance of every Friday, I'm going to clean up my downloads folder. As much as people have good intentions to do this, it rarely happens. And so a quick tweak in your browser's preferences to say, ask me where to save, can make a really big difference.
Absolutely, absolutely. It makes a really big difference. So first is you talked about these tools, either Dropbox or Google Drive and all. How does it? Are you talking of all of paid plans? A lot of individuals do not want to use these paid plans, and Dropbox has got, if I understand, the unpaid version is just 2 GB, and Google Drive has got 15 GB. But people find, Dropbox a bit easier because you can just drag and drop there. Google Drive, you have to upload and then download. So help us understand then, what is the best way for people who are not yet ready to spend that much of money onto this part? And in terms of files also, what is the best way of writing files names? Because you may think you have written correctly, but suppose you want to upload for a creator, they want to upload it for YouTube, then the file naming convention could be different, or maybe there is an ideal way. People think, this way it will lead to better SEO. So help us understand, both from a common person perspective, both about the Dropbox, Google Drive, as well as the naming convention for a layman, as well as for creators. How does it all work?
Okay, so number one is, what about Dropbox is easier to use than Google Drive because you can drag and drop? Well, the thing that most people don't realize is that in Google Drive, they have their own app too. So it's just as easy to use as Dropbox is. So you can install the Google Drive for Desktop app, and you can have a folder for Google Drive in Windows Explorer on a Mac, just like you can with Dropbox and OneDrive. So almost every platform, cloud platform that allows you to sync files has this utility that you can install, but most people just aren't aware of it. It's just Dropbox was the first one to do it, and so that's the one that we think about, and they really push that app on you, but it works either way. So if you like Google, but you just don't like having to go through the web browser, which I don't like having to upload files through a web browser either, you just download the app. And the cool thing is you can actually sync multiple accounts. So I'm signed into 2 different Google Drive accounts right now, one for a demo that I'm using for product that I'm creating, and then my primary, actually, I'm signed into 3 different accounts, and then 2 other different accounts, one for private and one for business. So it just, I like the way it separates things. And so, yeah, you can sign into multiple apps. Now, if you don't want to pay, what should you use? Um, well, I still like Google the best because you do get more space. The space is much cheaper. If you only need to buy a little bit more space, the space is cheaper than Dropbox. Now, Box used to give away 50 gigs for free. Um, I really hate that tool. I mean, Box is my least favorite, I think, out of all of them. Yeah, definitely not my favorite. So it's very slow to sync. There's a lot more errors involved, and they really want you to use the cloud version and use everything in there. Plus, if you use Box Notes, there's no conversion process. There's no way to get them out. So you have to manually copy every single note and paste it into a Word document or something else. So that's out of the mix. Amazon will give you a ton of free space, especially for your photos for free. But this is an add-on. These are things to just increase revenue for Amazon, but that's not their business. OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, my 3 favorites. If you're in the Windows world, stick with OneDrive. If you float in between or you're dealing with a lot of different people and contractors, Google's going to be your best shot. Otherwise, Dropbox, you just have to immediately bump up and spend a lot more money there.
Right.
So we can pause there and you can ask me some questions before we get on to file naming, or I can just jump into that.
Yes.
What do you
No,
want to do?
we'll get to the file naming. In terms
Okay.
of you, it's good you mentioned about OneDrive. Now it comes loaded with your computer, whatever things you buy, and many people do not like it. They want to delete it. They are not able to delete it.
Yeah.
OneNote, if you understand, they also are not able to delete it. At least I have not been able to, because I don't use all those so many
Right.
things. I am a very simple person. I use just
Right.
maybe 1 or 2, maybe Word. It's good
Mm-hmm.
enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, so in terms of those people, how should they look at OneDrive? To use, not to use. Google Drive, because it's part of the Google ecosystem,
Mm-hmm.
Gmail ecosystem, so it's come bundled. But again, there it's about the functionality in terms of Google Drive as well as Dropbox.
Yeah.
Dropbox, I don't know whether they have there was news that they are relieving a lot of people. I don't know how that system is working, whether it's working or not. So Google Drive looks to be, and another option, as you said, is that you can still bring that thing to the desktop. How, which is the best? If I have to look at one thing, which is the best for me in terms of a general person, for a business person, what is the best way to go?
I think that each one has its own merits, and it's about the context of your life and your business that should really help you to determine which platform you move forward with. Now, if we're going to talk about purely which one is the best, as far as like the best functionality, the fastest, the most reliable sync, the best admin console, if someone deletes a file to restore it, all of that sort of thing, Dropbox is the best. Um, Even though it's the best, I use Google Drive instead because I want one system. And because I'm collaborating with other people in Docs and Google Sheets a lot, and I like that live collaboration. So when it comes to graphic designers, people who are constantly uploading, downloading, and sharing large files, especially PowerPoint, Keynote files, and huge Adobe files, Dropbox is really going to be your best platform for that. When it comes to live collaboration in documents, spreadsheets, or slideshows, then we either want to go with Google or Microsoft. So those are you got two choices basically. Don't do anything else besides those two. Now, should you go with Google or Microsoft? Who are the people that you're interacting with most? If you're dealing with contractors all around the world and most of the people that you're working with are in the Google environment and they use docs, sheets, and slides, then that should be the route that you move forward with. Now, if you're in an industry that's primarily driven by Microsoft-based products and OneDrive shares or SharePoint and things like that, and the team or the people that you're working with primarily like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, then it's probably going to be best to stick with Microsoft. Now, if you like Google and you like using Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and you're not collaborating with people frequently, then you can stick with Google and still use all of your Word products and it'll be just fine because you're installing the app on your computer, so you can save from Word directly into your Google Drive folder. And that'll be fine. But when we set up a company who likes using Office products and they're primarily on Google Drive and they're all collaborating, they experience more friction than if they were in SharePoint or OneDrive, or if they would just commit to using Google Docs or Sheets.
Right. And now let's come to this naming things. What
Yeah,
is the right way? If there is one way, tell us that. If
sure.
there are two ways to follow, either as a creator or an individual, then
Yes.
people will then accordingly name the files.
Yes. So the way the main template that we work off, and then we adapt it depending on the needs of the client or that specific folder, then maybe this naming convention doesn't make sense at all, then we'll adapt. But the general convention is always start with a date. And the date needs to
Okay.
start with the year. So it's 2024. So it needs to be 2024. Don't start with 24. And then from there, the month. So, and we need zeros. So if it's January, it's going to be 01. And then also put the zeros in for the day as well. So for 1 through 9. So 2024-10 30. And then we do our name after that. And I like to categorize my files. So if it's an outline for a podcast that I'm going to do like this, then I'm going to name it the date that I created the file typically. And then I'm going to put in a dash and have the outline and then dash KAJ Masterclass. And so that way I can search your name, I can search outline, or I can look for the date. And the reason why we always want to start with a date is because when you're sorting alphabetically, you're sorting chronologically. And so you get three key pieces of information. When you're scanning, you get date, you get the type of file, it's an outline, and then you also get the detail of what's inside of that file. So we've found that to be a really great way to kind of start off the naming convention process of, creation process for a client.
Right, right. And you talk of certain softwares. Are there a couple of them you name, but are there other software that you would like to let people know your personal choice,
Sure.
which people would benefit if they use those?
Yes. So my favorite app of all time is 1Password. So it's one of the main competitors to LastPass. And I just think it is a phenomenal app. It's beautiful. It's very easy to use. It works really well. And it's very secure as well. And on top of that, they have done a fantastic job of solving the issue of two-step verification and pass keys. So it's imperative that everyone use the most secure passwords possible and use two-step verification. And so when you're using an app that can integrate that code into the login instead of getting a text message, this is huge when you're traveling and you have a different SIM card, Or if you're working on a team and someone else needs to get into your account, like my social media manager has to get into all of my accounts and he doesn't live in the US, then he has access to a vault or a folder of social media logins with all of the two-step codes. So I don't have to coordinate with him in different time zones of, hey, I'm locked out of the account. Can you get me this code and that whole thing? So I absolutely love that app.
Absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely. And what about to-do lists? How do we manage
Yeah.
that? Some
So
people
we,
use
yeah.
digital, some people also use diary and all.
Uh-huh.
So, what is the best way to manage that?
The best way to manage it is the way that you can do it consistently. That is the
Right.
most important thing. The reason why everyone has problems with their to-do list is they're not actually doing the things because they don't understand the core concepts behind good project management and how we approach getting a task done. And so they're thinking that the problem is the app. And because they can't see it exactly the way they want, and they don't want to do the task anyway, so it's better to find a different app to use instead that may be better. So biggest thing is, how do you use it and can you do it consistently? Now the apps that we like best would be Asana and ClickUp if we're talking like actual project management, especially if you're working with a team. And the one that I like best just for task management, if you're to do something personally, would be Todoist.
Right, right. All these things that you said,
Hmm.
can one do it themselves? Is it easy? Or and when do you come into the picture, especially for businesses? What is it that they are losing? Some people will say it's just a minor stuff. One way or
Yeah.
the other, we are able to do our thing. Why do
Hmm.
we need a professional to get into it? So I want to understand, when do you get into the picture? What is it that you start doing? How do you get them started?
Yeah, so the reason why a lot of people come to us is typically an event happens, or either they hear about this and they've been wanting it for a while and just didn't know that it existed. But a lot of times people just reach a breaking point of way too much email. They lose files. They have an embarrassing situation, and they come to us. And what we start with in the discovery call process is finding out, is this important to you in the first place? And what's the cost? And what we find out is it's a pretty big drain. The amount of stress that not knowing where everything is and having to recreate things over and over again, it creates a lot of friction throughout your day and throughout working all year. And how you spend your days is how you spend your life. So if you're constantly fighting with technology, which most people are, you're in a battle all day. What I want to do is reduce the friction so that you can find what you need in seconds and everyone can work very efficiently and stop having to ask the senior member of the team, hey, do you know where this file is? Where can I find? Oh, yeah, that was in Basecamp because of whatever. So, we're really reducing friction and making the team so much more efficient. Usually people say that their team members have an extra 2 hours a week at least. So it's a pretty big difference. So that's maybe a reason why. But how do we get started is discovering where are the broken pieces? Like, what is causing the most friction? Let's tackle those first. And let's figure out how all of these things play into each other. Because we communicate about tasks and we also deliver files to people. So we have communication, files, and project management that are all feeding into one another and rely on each other to really get things done. And so we want to look at that whole picture and see which one, if we start with, will give us the momentum to get the next one and help to fix all of the other pieces so that your business is working really well from a foundational level. And usually that's identify, consolidate, start purging, reorganize, and restructure and rename your stuff.
Wonderful, wonderful. There is so much to learn from you about these things, Shawn, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to connect with you, learn more from you, about you. Uh, and so, what is the best way for them to do so?
Yeah. So the best thing to do is go to thedigitalorganizer.com/KAJ. And that's where you can download that file organization guide. And then you'll learn some more about us. We've got a few emails where we introduce ourselves and give you some additional resources. Just besides this files guide, which has videos. I mean, there's all kinds of really good stuff that I've attached in that. It's very helpful. And then I've got emails coming to you of how to clean up your email better and some of those different things. And it's just a fantastic way to learn about us. We'll introduce you to our quiz that we have so you can find out where to get started. So just go to that link and we'll get you started.
Absolutely. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.